Are you not drinking hard proof alcohol because it just burns too much? Well, I might have some tips for you that's going to help. So for starters, what is high proof alcohol? Usually to have a spirit, a alcoholic beverage like a whiskey, a vodka, a rum, anything along those lines, a gin, you have to be over 40% ABV, or like we talked about in our last video, over 80 proof, like we talked about before in our American proofing system. So that means that any whiskey that's stronger than 40% or any spirit that's stronger than 40% is a pretty strong spirit. And it might be considered unusual if you are kind of new to the whiskey drinking game, spirit drinking game. But don't worry, because usually if you go to a bar, that's probably what you're going to get, 40%. Now, when you walk into a friend's house and they're a spirit advocate and they know and love all these different spirits, well, what might happen is you might walk into a whiskey which is more than 40%. In fact, in the US, it's quite common that we get whiskeys which are upwards of 50, or let's say 48% and more than 90 proof and more. And there's a few reasons for this. Reason number one, we have what we like to call bottled in bond, which is a traditional name or a traditional method employed by the US government to add some type of stabilization to what is whiskey. So to give it some definition, what is American whiskey? Now that meant that that product, that whiskey, is considerably stronger. 10% more alcohol is maybe more than you think. However, we go a bit crazier than that. There are some spirits out there which are way stronger than that. For instance, this special barrel of Jack Daniels, this barrel pick here, is 64.5% alcohol. That's a lot of alcohol. Well, A, how does this happen? And B, when you run into a bottle like this, what should you do? You don't have to run, you don't have to hide, and you may or may not have to throw ice on it, but we'll get to that. A, strong whiskey like this, my first recommendation to you is to drink it like it's a hot beverage, a hot tea, hot water. Don't think it's hot cocoa, think it's something that's like boiling hot. You want that first sip to be just enough. And then what you're going to feel after that first sip, it might even be a few drops if you had it like in a pipette or something like this. But what that's going to start to do is salivate your esophagus. So your throat is going to start, or your mouth is going to start to produce more drool, saliva, and that's going to go down your throat. Don't worry, this is a good thing, and that sensation is not a sign of bad or poorly made alcohol. That is your body's way of protecting yourself. So with this new saliva that I have first built up in my mouth, now also working down my throat, sorry, I had to swallow some down to protect my throat. What's happening now is I'm protecting it from the high proof alcohol, which I'm going to drink on my second sip. And sip after sip after sip, it's going to stop burning so much and it's going to stay tasting, and I'm going to taste better and better, and I'm also going to start to pick up more from it. So tip number one, drink it like it is hot, hot, hot tea, coffee, whatever. If you have too much, you're going to burn yourself. It's the same with high proof whiskey. Now, is it still too strong and maybe you're not able to get the full benefit or understanding about why that whiskey is, let's say, so renowned or so well thought of? I have a tip that some people are going to like and some people are going to shake their head at, but I personally like doing it. So we know this whiskey, there's not a lot in here, but that little amount, it's pretty strong. Again, this is the same. This is my Jack Daniels here, 64.5%. I'm going to take my finger and I'm actually going to put it just a bit in the bottle. So you can see there, I've got just, oh no, you can see there, I've got just a little bit, almost just hanging on my finger. Now what I'm going to do is take that bit, put it in my hand, rub it till it starts to get warm, and then start to breathe it in. The idea here is just like with perfume or cologne, you spray it on a piece of paper, you shake it around, the alcohol, the preservatives in there, the really strong volatile stuff is going to start to evaporate. And what's going to stay on your hand is the smell of the whiskey. So the oak that you might be looking for, the cherry or vanilla notes that you might get in a whiskey. Those are going to become stronger. And if it was a whiskey that you just stuck your nose in and took a huge breath right away, you might have broken up or messed up your palate or your nose, maybe for a while. Start with this trick. If it's too strong, I should also mention a better trick is if it's too strong, don't stick your nose in it, kind of smell it out a little bit and slowly work your way into it. But also dip your finger, rub it around, give it a smell. This is something that the more you do and the more you drink, your body's going to acclimate to it, and it's going to be easier and easier to drink, but drink it slowly. Don't stick your nose all the way in the glass. And also, if you don't get any smells or any character out of it, maybe think about trying the finger trick. Maybe. Now, my final tip is if you think, okay, this whiskey is still too much for me, I'm not going to be able to handle 64.5%, and you should know you are not alone. I myself will not drink so much of this just all sitting down in one shot, so you can look at adding, and this is just a little cheap pipette here, but I can drop and add single drops of water into my whiskey. So why do I use something like this and not, I don't know, just another cup and I'm pouring it in or something like that? I want to be in control of how much whiskey or how much water I'm adding to my whiskey and how much I'm diluting it. As you can see, I don't necessarily have a lot of whiskey here. And you might be surprised, 1 or 2 drops is probably doing more than you think and dropping the ABV maybe too low. So I like to be a little cautious in this process and just add drop by drop. Now Armand, what about the waters in the minerals, or what type of water are you using if you know a little bit of whiskey? Stuff. I like to use distilled water, and I use distilled water. I use distilled water for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, it's what the distillers use. So when you as a distiller are distilling and looking to proof down or to proof your whiskey to whatever percentage, 40, 50 or whatever in between you think gives you the best flavor, you won't just go to the water, you won't go to the faucet and just turn on the water and fill up a glass and use that to dilute. No, you're probably going to use distilled water, which is what I have in here. Now, benefits or the reasons to use distilled water, it's kind of simple. There's no minerals in it. There's no additives in it. When I've distilled this water, what I've got on the other side of my still, you can use a still to distill water, is purified water. It's got no flavor, it's got no taste, and that's why we use it, because I don't want the flavor of the whiskey to be changed by the flavor of the water. So what are we doing? Adding drops, just a few. Taste test it, small baby sips like it's hot water, and you're adding drops of cold water to it, and then see if it gets to the level that you're able to taste it out. Another reason I like high-proofed alcohol is actually because you get to find your own proofing percentage, or you get to find, let's say, the right amount of water for that whiskey to speak the most to you. You might have heard before, add a drop or 2 and it's going to taste different, it's going to taste better. Well, that's could be and could not be true. You got to be careful. Again, adding too much too quickly or too much at one point, there's no going back. But if you're lucky, you're going to find that perfect amount that makes that whiskey just that much more enjoyable for you. Now, just to close this little video up with a quick fun fact, how does or why is it possible to create whiskey which is so strong, which is 64%? 64.5%. The reason is, or I shouldn't say reason is, when you're distilling, it's quite easy to get higher percentages of alcohol, especially with the right still. However, what you're not taking into account is that in the US and around the world, there's different rules for this. There are limitations on how strong you can put, or how much ABV, how much alcohol you can put into a barrel. In the US, it's actually 62.5%, which means, wait, Armand, how did this bottle of whiskey get more than 62%? How is there more alcohol in the bottle than there was in the barrel? Well, the answer to that is in different parts of the US, especially it's called central eastern region, and parts of the West too, and when you get this a lot in Texas whiskeys, where it's a dry, hot climate, what actually happens inside a barrel is you tend to lose more water than you do alcohol. The more humid your air is, more wet, warm, and creating humidity, the more alcohol you lose. And this is why you're probably, or sometimes, walk into a single malt or a barrel-proofed whiskey that's been aged for a long time from a colder, more humid region, and that's going to have way less alcohol in there, sometimes just over 50. And this is why also distillers and barrel management needs to be very careful, because if you leave a barrel out there for too long and you're not constantly checking it, if the ABV drops below 40%, which has happened, well, now you don't really have whiskey anymore, and you got to figure out something to do with that barrel. Maybe you got to blend it, which sometimes is okay, but might have been a shame. So I hope this video helped you with your next glass of high proof whiskey. Enjoy it, don't be afraid of it, and as always, cheers to you and your next high proof glass of whiskey. Bye now. Just a drop.